What is up, you guys? It is Xantho here, and today I'm going to be going over my changes I've made from Victims-based tree, as well as little gearing differences, tree differences, and little skill limit differences to pump out the most damage and the most ES possible. So, what is the first change I've made? The first change I've made is swapping out Clay Shaper for Cold Iron Point. You lose one Golem, but you gain 3 levels on the Golem, which still ends up being more damage. Let's do Clay Shaper, and don't go by combined DPS, that adds bleed, and you don't really want to add bleed DPS because it doesn't really matter. You can only have one bleed on the enemy. It's not like a bunch. So let's go 7,303,8110 times 5. That's 36 million DPS. Gold Iron Point is 9,468. 693 times 4 is 37 million DPS, about 38. It's 1.5 to 2 million more DPS in my setup, at least. It might be less in your setup because mine is pumped up so high, but it's still more DPS overall no matter what way you slice it. So next change, I have added some minions deal increased damage gloves. The way you're going to do this is you're going to go, let's say 170 ES gloves, then you're going to go do the tilde key, go crafted energy shield local, crafted energy shield local. Then you're going to go not, and you're going to go here and type in empty prefix modifiers. And it's going to give you gloves that are not crafted on, so basically they have the ES rolled on them already, so you don't have to multi-mod them. And here we got 170 ES gloves for 40C that have an empty prefix mod that you can just craft on minions deal increased damage. So that's one cool thing you can add for extra damage. Another cool thing you can do is quality your amulet for life and mana rather than attributes. I'm not sure why it's showing 19 attributes. It should be 16. And what this will do is will increase the total percentage of life converted energy shield to 24 instead of 20. It's going to cost you a 70 to 80 chaos to do, but it's totally worth it. It's going to gain you a couple hundred ES. So next, what's next? I only have one Viv Insect because I can't afford the next one because I spent all my money on awakened supports because they're more damage. So what do I do in place of Viv Insect? You get an unset ring with +3 to socketed gems, and then just the dex and strength you need. That's all you got to do. You might be able to pick one up with energy shield, maybe 20, 30, 40 energy shield. Or if you can get these not on it, then you can craft on energy shield or percent energy shield. I can't remember which one is available on rings. I think maybe percent's only available on amulets. I can't remember exactly, but you can figure that out for yourself. Next change I have made is getting in a Fortress Covenant. I dropped a Primordial Eminence for a Fortress Covenant. Fortress Covenants are usually bad for minion builds. Well, there's a trade-off. You usually use these for stuff like SRS or minion instability, where you don't want them to take extra damage, or you don't care about them taking extra damage, because this makes notables in the radius make your minions take extra damage. However, if you use them in a cluster jewel, there's no notables in the radius, and it'll give you this little warning in red here. However, if you can see the text says small jewel socket, it in fact is giving you 44% increased damage. Rolls from like 30 to 45, I think. And then giving your minions block and spell block, which is great, which actually increases their survivability on a jewel that's supposed to decrease their survivability, because there's no notables in the radius and it's in a cluster jewel. So you get all the upsides and 0 of the downsides. Very cool. So fit in one of those. It's a lot of damage. Just replace an Eminence with this and make sure it's in a cluster jewel so it's not affecting any notables. Next, I swapped out of Redemption for Fearsome Force. Fearsome Force is actually more damage. The only thing you really lose is 10% minion, 10% movement speed, which is kind of negligible because your main minions are golems and they're leap slamming around, and you have haste and everything. It's just the 10% is negligible. But you gain damage, and the increase in clear speed with the AoE is going to make up for it immensely, because this is, let's see, 12, 24, 39, 49% increase to AoE, which is a massive. If you know how the first few percentages of AoE works, this is a massive amount of AoE. So this is going to make your bone cascades from your Carrion golems be massive, and clear entire packs in one swipe. So that's where I've swapped out for that. Otherwise, the tree is completely unchanged. I've just swapped these three for these three because it's worth it, and then swapped in a Fortress Covenant. What else have I done? Let us see. I have dropped Impale support for damage on full life, because even without Impale support, our Carrion golems have 98% Impale chance, and there's really no point in using Impale support. It's just less damage. 20. It's like the 4th best damage support. Even increased critical damage is better support. So damage of full life definitely is your best support. Your Carrion golems are essentially always in full life because, let's see, they are regenning 6,000 life per second and leeching about 9.5 thousand. So they're regaining 15,000 life per second. So they're pretty much invulnerable to damage, and they're pretty much always going to be on full life. I mean, even if they get hit for 15,000 damage, which is unlikely considering their damage reduction, not their damage reduction, their elemental resistance and chaos resistance, which aren't not their chaos resistance isn't too high, but their elemental resistance is incredibly high. But it's unlikely they're going to hit for more than that damage, and they'll regain it in 1 second. So they're always on full life, pretty much always. What else have I changed? This should be Divergent. So that's actually more DPS than I thought it was. That should be a Divergent Flesh Offering. What else do we have? I'm not even using Awakened Generosity. I should probably be doing that. The cool thing about not using a Viv Insect is you can get a level 20 precision rather than a level 16, which can do more damage. You're going to lose a little bit on your fire resistance because it's only +3 in the Viv Insect rather than +5, so you're going to lose like 1% resistance. And in my opinion, playing like 4 or 5x for a ring is not worth 1% max fire res. Like, I don't think that's worth it. So I'm just probably not going to get another Viv Insect. Like, I'm good with 1. Like, I'm just not going to do it. And because you don't have that 10% increased mana reservation, it allows you to squeeze out a bit more damage from your precision. In fact, I probably have enough to go level 21 precision. I do, actually. And that would add, let's see, how much damage? 18,000. That's not a ton, but I could do it. It's only dropping me 6 unreserved mana. So I definitely could do that. In fact, I just might do that. So, what else have I changed? Oh yeah, there's one option you can do to squeeze out a bit more damage, but it's situational. Is you can drop Fall Haste from here, add Flesh and Stone, drop Generosity, and then put your Fall Haste in your boots, and then not use normal haste, and just use Vol Haste. And that's going to increase your damage by about 300,000 or so per golem, so about 1.2 million overall. But the issue is the AoE of the Flesh and Stone is this. Even with all the area and aura effect on the tree, this is your AoE. It's not too big, which means you're going to have to be right on top of bosses, and you're not going to be able to, run around and be safe like you should be able to be on bosses because your Carrion golems are so aggressive. So I don't suggest using it. I just don't like using Flesh and Stone, even though it's more damage. So I much prefer just using normal Fall Haste in your shield, and then Generosity on your Dread Banner and Precision. So that's pretty much all the changes I've made. Here's my 6 links: Weapon 1, Weapon 2, boots 2, Ring 1, Ring 2, helmet, gloves in a separate socket, shield, and then an empty thing. So that is my DPS, I'm going to set this back to normal. Also, one further option you can do is instead of using Convocation, you can use a level 1 Clarity to gain just a little bit more DPS. In fact, that's actually a significant amount of more DPS. Move that there and go back to using Generosity. That adds what, 160,000 burgers, about 500,000. And that's just because Necromancer gives attack and cast speed per aura. So this is going to be an extra 3% attack and cast speed, which ends up being 180,000 damage apparently. So that's an option, but I wouldn't really suggest it because I like using Convocation. And then on bosses, you're just going to use Desecrate anyway, because you need the corpses for your flesh offering. So, total DPS in this build is about 40 million, actually more like 42 million, because your zombies are going to do a couple million DPS on their own. Your apes, your Carnage Chieftains, and Host Chieftains are going to do about 600,000-700,000 altogether. Then your AG is going to do about 100,000 DPS. So total it's going to be like anywhere from 40 to 45 million DPS. With about 7.2k ES, 40 to 45 million DPS. So that should be that. Just a couple changes I made, a couple options you can run. So that is that. Hope you guys have fun.